It's popular in some circles to say that Jesus never existed. Now, this isn't exactly a new idea. At one time, some scholars taught that Jesus was just modeled after the pagan gods of antiquity. That theory had its heyday in the last half of the 1800s and the first couple of decades of the 1900s. But by the middle of the 20th century, the idea was basically dead. In the closing decades of the 20th century, however, the idea began to pick up steam again, and today it's growing in popularity. Dozens of popular websites carry articles questioning whether Jesus was a real person, and they claim that scholars everywhere have concluded that Jesus never existed. Now, this belief is called mythicism. To put it very simply, it involves the idea that Jesus was never anything more than a fictional creation of the earliest Christians who basically plagiarized Christian beliefs to create their version of a Messiah that had supposedly existed in other religions for hundreds of years. The people who hold to this point of view are called mythicists. They believe scholarship has brought the existence of Jesus into serious doubt. There are websites devoted to the issue, and numerous articles have been carried in a variety of news outlets about it. Naturally, popular atheist websites also include material on the subject. Well, it might be easy to simply claim that religious people believe in Jesus' existence and non-religious people don't. In other words, your view of the historicity of Christ is determined by whether or not you have religious faith. Actually, it's not quite that simple or that evenly divided. The truth of the matter is that virtually every scholar in the world, at least the Western world, believes that Jesus really lived. I would estimate that only a tiny fraction would deny this. But I don't want you to take my word for it. Bart Ehrman is a New Testament scholar who wrote a book on the existence of Jesus. He also describes himself as an agnostic with atheistic leanings. Here's what he had to say.
I do not see evidence in archaeology or history for a historical Jesus.
Yeah, well, I do. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. Well, I have a whole book on it. So there is a lot of evidence. I mean, there is so much evidence that it is not. I mean, I know in the crowds you all run around with, it's commonly thought that Jesus did not exist. Let me tell you, once you get outside of your conclave, there's nobody who. I mean, this is not even an issue for scholars of antiquity. It is not an issue for scholars. There is no scholar in any college or university in the Western world who teaches classics, ancient history, New Testament, early Christianity, any related field who doubts that Jesus existed. Now, that is not evidence. That is not evidence. Just because everybody thinks so doesn't make it evidence. It may not be evidence, but if you've got a different opinion, you better have a pretty good piece of evidence yourself. The reason for thinking Jesus existed is because he is abundantly attested in early sources. That's why. And I give the details in my book. Early and independent sources indicate that certainly that Jesus existed. One author that we know about knew Jesus' brother and knew Jesus' closest disciple, Peter. He's an eyewitness to both Jesus' closest disciple and his brother. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but again, I respect your disbelief, but if you want to go where the evidence goes, I think that atheists have done themselves a disservice by jumping on the bandwagon of mythicism, because, frankly, it makes you look foolish to the outside world.
So you can see that the perspective of a non-believing scholar like Ehrman is that Jesus did, in fact, walk the earth. To be fair, that in itself isn't evidence. To say that Jesus was an historical person because scholars say so, that would be a fallacious argument. But the fact that almost every scholar does say so means that the evidence must be fairly compelling. The fact that many of these scholars are also agnostics or atheists means that the argument isn't based on religious faith. And as Ehrman said in the video, it also means that if you're going to try to prove that all scholars of antiquity are wrong about this, you need some compelling evidence of your own. So far, critics of the Bible simply haven't done this. Typically, mythicists just recycle the same old arguments from the 19th century that were debunked decades ago. What about this Jesus, the man who healed the sick and caused the blind to see? Did he really exist? That does seem to be the direction where all of the evidence is pointing. And I'm sorry to say it, but the people who deny Jesus' existence seem to be doing so not because the evidence leads them to that conclusion, but because it's simply what they want. Many people have said that Jesus is the best attested person in history. Personally, I would exercise some caution in going that far, but they're not wrong.